everybody, and welcome to E-commerce Quick Fix Cross-Border Magazine official podcast. Today is a happy day, it's a great day. We are with our friend Frank Wever. Frank, how are you? How's everything?
Yeah, doing good. Just that Easter weekend, so we had a nice long weekend, enjoying the sun, being out and about. So yeah, going very well. How about you?
Looky you. Here in Madrid, we had like 1 day of sun and then like 4 days of rain. But it's starting to look like London. I don't know what's going on here. But Frank, it's amazing to have you again with us in the podcast. Last podcast show with you was incredibly cool, really nice, really fluid. We would like to have that same rapport this time here. But we're going to be talking about a different topic this time, isn't it? We're going to be talking about the difference between e-fulfillment and contract logistics, which is something that many people in the industry is not entirely aware of. They don't really understand that difference at the core level. So I think it's a very valid, very interesting topic today. Let's start from the very beginning. Exactly what is, or could you briefly explain what problem both e-fulfillment and contract logistics are trying to solve, so we actually understand what we're talking about here?
Yeah, sure. If we want to bring it to maybe one sentence to keep it really short and understandable, is that e-fulfillment is a generic solution for a specific problem, and contract logistics is a specific solution for a specific problem. That's in a nutshell. And there are multiple ways where you can explain that and where each have their own merit within the ecosystem. But that's the short of it.
Mm-hmm. That will be like the condensed version of it, isn't it?
Exactly, exactly. And we can elaborate based off of that. Uh, I mean, all in all, they have the same needs,
Mm-hmm.
because outsourcing fast growing companies is always an interesting one, especially when you have companies that have excessive growth. Imagine you having a company that grows like 25, 30% on a yearly base, and leases in general are long leases, 4 or 5 years. And with that growth, how are you going to find a property? How are you
Mm-hmm.
going to find people? But also in e-commerce, it's peak driven. There's a peak in the end of the day where people still want to order when they get home from work. There's a peak at the start of the week because people are ordering during the weekend. There's a peak during certain parts of the year, Black Friday, singles week.
And those changes those are customer behaviors, and those changes are region lock. I mean, they are region specific, or you could say that overall, everybody, like on the working days, most likely will make an order. No, most of the people won't order on the weekends. I mean, is there a pattern there that you could say it's global, or it's
Yeah, I mean, usually bosses don't get very happy when people start shopping during the
during
workday.
the work?
So that's already pushed out more towards the end of the day. But during the weekend, you got some more time on your hands to maybe check out this specific part of electronics you want to have or whatever in these kind of things. And sure, there are certain moments in a year where it's country specific. But all in all, as soon as it's a hype like Black Friday, you see it ebbing over the world, as well as Singles Day, which was Asian heritage. So it's goes vice
Hmm.
versa. And as soon as it's a hype, e-commerce loves to dive into that to create a sale and create that flow.
Now, Frank, you were you were mentioning that this there is a fundamental difference on the capability of these two approaches to solve, to fix things regarding the growth of a company. I mean, if a company has an explosive growth, it requires one specific solution. If the company has like a more stable growth, then maybe it will be better to go with the other one.
No, what I meant is that the explosive growth is always a good reason for
Hmm.
outsourcing on its own,
Okay.
because otherwise, as a company, you're responsible to create or deal with the fluctuations in personnel
Hmm.
and also in to tackle peaks and
Yeah,
also
because people forget that
space.
as things can go up, they can go down pretty quickly. Pretty fast.
Exactly. If you're doubling in capacity, you need double the space, but double the people. And what are you going to do with these people? Are you going to find a temp agency? What we usually try to do, and what an e-com is also just the thing, is to find companies that are counterintuitive peak-wise. So you could just shift people around.
Okay.
And um, the difference between the e-fulfillment and the contract logistics is because the contract logistics is that specific solution, we will create your own little warehouse in a warehouse. That means that we would have set people working on that maybe have a sub company where they flow off to when the peak is counterintuitive over there. So people have one or two situations where in e-fulfillment, it's people working. The first peak could be one company, and then the next 20, 30 peaks are different companies.
Mm-hmm.
So they could be servicing 220 different companies out of one location without a little bit of ownership.
Hmm.
So typically the e-fulfillment solutions are based off of generic e-com products without any issues or strange things, or a B2B flow, because a B2B flow where carton picks need to be done or pallets need to be shipped out is such a different flow that e-fulfillment companies might struggle a little bit more with that. So what you would see is, as soon as that whole new flow would be introduced, it would be more interesting to work your way towards a contract logistics situation.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, that e-fulfillment is easy to set up because there's already an existing flow you could just dive into. So it's relatively cheap to start off with, and there's always excess capacity to build up on. So it's not that rigid. As
Mm-hmm.
soon as we're trying to create something on the contract logistics side, whether that's specific needs or different flows, then you get that whole situation built off of one client. But that means the flexibility of using that setup for other clients is much less. So the whole scale of the operation needs to be bigger because we have an engineering team creating that little miniature warehouse within a warehouse, and that's involving cost. So the costs need to be carried to make sense to go into that contract logistics
Mm-hmm.
situation.
So you already kind of gave the outline of how the e-logistics model behaves, but if I want, I mean, could we say that a tailor-made solution like contract logistics is always going to fit better for companies than a generalistic approach like e-fulfillment? I don't know if that applies because we know that, for example, usually bespoke tailor-made things fit always better. You know, the best example is clothing. You know, a tailor-made suit is always going to fit you better than a Zara suit. You go to Zara, buy a suit, it's not going to fit you the same. Same things happen for technical stuff like cameras and for e-commerce in general. But does that apply to logistics? I mean, if I'm a company that's starting out, should I go
So
for a bespoke solution like a contract logistics solution?
it depends. Are all your suits in your closet tailor made?
No, exactly.
Exactly. So I mean, if you want to splurge, or you have that one moment where everything needs to be completely fine and you have the money to do it and it makes sense, or if you are like 6 feet 5 and you need that special suit because there aren't any solutions for you, then yeah, that tailor-made solution is the best for you. But the question is, are you willing to splurge on, in some cases, that few percent improvement on your situation? That's the biggest question. And um, especially, say for instance, if we were to use an AutoStore for a client, and an e-fulfillment company would have that same AutoStore, then the differences are not that big. But you also need to wonder if some business on the side of that B2B flow could be picked up, and does that same e-fulfillment company have the capabilities to also include that part, because that's normally out of scope for an e-fulfillment company.
Would you say, like, for example, in which situations, which specific situations, would you say that e-logistics fulfillment works the best?
In a startup situation. So, or when it's so generic, and startup is a broad spectrum, because I've seen companies that do 500,000 shipments on a yearly basis that still would be equipped to be done in an e-fulfillment situation. Or if you have a lot of different locations where your e-fulfillment is being done, because those are all small scale operations. And if you want to have that specific tailor-made solution on all these, that's like a really expensive job.
And at which point would you say, like, which one is like the deal breaker, the point in which companies start to experience like friction with e-logistics?
So as soon as that few percent in optimization would warrant the cost or even drop into savings, that's the moment. Or when a company needs all kinds of value-added services, and then maybe not exactly always on a hands-on level, but maybe physical representation of a company, because that's a service we also provide. And then you could still have that in-house. Or if you need that global reach, you won't need to have a site on every continent. Then you could orchestrate that with one contract logistics company that has one same system, and then contract logistics would make sense. So it's always good to find out which niches apply to you, and whether or not that point is there that it can become a winning solution instead of that's costing you more.
So we could say that contract logistics is for complexity.
It's often used for complexity, but also it might be able to remove complexity. I could refer to a situation.
Yeah, I see why you kept silent. It makes sense. Yeah, of course. I mean, the whole idea is to remove the complexity out of a company, of a brand that is actually selling. And I don't know, from a logistics point of view, from your side, which is the guy that is handling the complexity, I mean, you don't remove the complexity, you just handle it because you know how to do it, isn't it?
Yeah, but sometimes the solution a e-fulfillment company provides could be a little bit more complex than actually would be needed.
Oh, yeah, because it's generic, no? So it's like they go for what is best for everybody, not necessarily for you.
Exactly. So what you see is sometimes you had a lot of movement in, for instance, an AutoStore solution, which many of these e-fulfillment companies service, is always moving about.
Okay.
And as soon as you have a solution that could be stationary, because it's a limited amount of SKUs or it's a high turnaround, then you could do it from a stationary location. And that AutoStore still creates movement, and movements, whether or not it's automated, will still cost money. And if you could be more efficient by being stationary, then there's already a win to gain. And even sometimes you're seeing automated packing behind, for instance, a AutoStore. And also in that case, your goods need to fit on that base plate of that parcel in the packaging machine. And sometimes maybe a shipping bag, or would be more efficient or cost saving, or a better solution. And if an e-fulfillment company has already set up that complete flow, they will abide by it because it's their happy flow.
Now, Frank, there is a kind of a myth. I don't know if it's a myth or not. You're gonna bust the myth now between the people in the industry, the merchants, that contract logistics require higher investment to start. Is this true or not?
Yes.
Yes, it is true.
It is true, because
so myth confirmed.
Myth confirmed, because there's a solution design team looking at what would be the best specific solution for your setup. Instead of that, we just drop it into the pre-created solution, where we might lose some efficiency. So we will always do our best to create the most efficient setup for your operation. And sometimes that's including or creating costs that wouldn't be earned back in the short term, maybe
Mm-hmm.
in 2 or 3 years. But in the end, being more efficient will earn it back. The question is if it's within the first contract term or maybe the second or third.
Mm. Usually, how long does the contract last? I mean, which will be like the standard contract term?
Yeah, that's
It's
that's a
very
difficult.
wild. No, it's like
Yes,
it varies a lot.
I mean it all drills down in how much do we need to invest to create your best solution. If I need to create an AutoStore or a locust bots or another form of automation, then yeah, that's dependent on if I'm building a complete site for you,
Mm-hmm.
then we're not going to build that back in 3 years. So as soon as we're going to create a whole site of 50,000 square meters for you, then yeah, it's going to be a long contract.
Hmm. And which one would you say are like the main red flags or logistic indicators that a company might need a solution of this kind?
This kind, you mean an own site
Contract,
or
contract, yeah, contract fulfillment.
contract
Like,
logistics?
which
Okay.
will be the contract logistics? Yeah, which will be like if I have a company, for which things should I be looking for to know that I need to change into a contract logistic model?
From your own situation or an e-fulfillment situation, what would be the jump off?
Both. Let's do both. I mean, if I am already in an e-fulfillment situation, which things? I mean, I guess I sense that will be easier because it means that something is failing with my logistics or it's already at the top capacity. And if I don't have anything, if I'm starting and I need to know both
Yeah.
scenarios.
So from that e-fulfillment perspective is as soon as you're going to add complexity to
Mm-hmm.
that no longer will be involved in their current setup in that, for instance, an AutoStore or other site. So that B2B flow, you're going to sell to, you're selling perfumes or other stuff, uh, and it needs to go to B2B points. We're creating those pallets or we're creating bundling and other Mother Day gifts or Valentine gifts. And there's a lot of excess work to be done. And the current e-fulfillment company isn't equipped to do so. Sometimes they do, but B2B is a completely different flow. So as soon as those complexities arise, it might be a good point to dive into a different system.
Mm-hmm.
Or if if that auto store which they run or otherwise of automation still has that lack of efficiency, that few percent,
Mm-hmm.
then it would be efficient to dive into the whole situation. On the other hand, if you're running your own operation, you see people are smuggling productivities. So the boss that has a few hours that dives into the warehouse and does some picking and packing, or some other people they don't account for maybe sick days or lack in productivities because of a party, these kind of things. Um, from their own perspective, I would say as soon as you see that moving around, that needing extra space, the growth that continues, as soon as you have a steady growth of a few percent, you will be able to manage as you did. But personnel could be a problem because of liabilities for people that are sick days and all these kind of things. So in that case, it's more a question of can you keep up with the growth of your company and that those peak seasons and these kind of things, and also the reach, because you might have your own situation in Spain, but what if you need one in the UK? Then are you going to have your own warehouse there as well, or are you going to
Mm.
drop into a contract logistics situation or an e-fulfillment situation, just depending on what the offset is in such a country or area.
Hmm. Yeah, you recently, we know, Frank, that you recently work on a case that I think it's a perfect example of differences between e-fulfillment and contract logistics. Could you walk us through it and why, how was, which one was the approach? How did you reach to a conclusion of on which one of the models was best and kind of the thought process that you did behind this case?
Yeah, the fun part in that case is that it doesn't stand on its own. Um, I will dive into one case, but I had four cases on a same level and the same issue. So in this case, this was a supplement company that did like 1 million parcels on a yearly base with a limited amount of SKUs.
For
Small.
someone that is listening to the podcast and has like no general grasp of the industry, is that much or is not too much that amount of parcels?
It's on the bigger side, so it's you're past the startup in general speaking. So what we saw is that because they have a limited amount of products and they have small products, because typically what you see is an e-com parcel is between 1 and 2 kilograms and 11 liters big. So they were at an e-fulfillment company that was struggling to keep up with that growth. And because of that growth, not everything would be delivered on time. So even during Black Friday, they sometimes had 2 weeks time that was needed to get deliveries to the client. And what we did was we asked them for all their information. So a snapshot of their stock, their sales over the past year, their inbound flows, and we all mapped them out. So we could exactly see their flow of the company, exactly see when they needed people. And because of the limited amount of SKUs and the small operation plus what was needed, we created stationary sites with an auto bag situation that the order, when it was picked, could be laid down on and would be dropped into a baggie labeled and would be going onto a belt sorter onto a direction where it was going.
This is contract logistics. I mean, this
This
was a
was,
contract logistics
in
solution.
this case, this was the best solution for this client
Okay.
because they had like 40 or 50 products that could be set up around a customer or an employee. And we create 4 or 5 of these locations. We would restock them from the back, from broken down pallets. We would have some pallet space behind that. And it would be a really efficient operation, like 500 square meters, where we could operate that 1 million parcels out of that site. So because of that, we were able to be a little bit more efficient for this client, so they wouldn't see any price increase compared to their current operation. So that means that even
Their
though it
current operation was e-logistics.
was e-logistics,
Okay.
and what we did is instead of, because they were operating 6 days a week for this client, and what we did was we offered the client the possibility to, we would be working 7 days a week in 2 shifts. And as soon as a peak would arise, like a Black Friday, we could even install a third shift because all the goods to operate that third shift were in place. So we could still make sure that mostly, like in 99%, everything would be ordered or delivered next day, with assuming that the carrier handles that, because on a Sunday, it's not always every carrier that drives out on a Sunday. But they would be at least out the door that same day. And
That was an improvement.
that was an improvement, yeah,
Mm.
because they had those Black Friday peaks and sometimes a sale peak where delivery took a lot longer. So we could create that same solution, that same service for them at the same price point, with the only side mark is that it's a specific solution for this client. And all in all, it was a great improvement for them.
Okay. And you said that this was not like an isolated case. There
No,
are at least three more because you mentioned four four cases.
exactly. And then I'm asking these clients, who are you in talks to? And sometimes we have the situation where we're the only contract logistics party they speak to. And then I'm
Oh,
asking,
is
and
that a good
that
thing? I mean, I guess for you, it should be a good thing, isn't it? Because you have no competition, or it's a bad thing.
well, that depends, because then I'm asking a client, I said, do you know do you know the difference? Like exactly what we're discussing. And people are like, no, I mean, you're all 3PL, right? Yeah, we're 3PL, but the difference is that generic solution versus the specific solution. And then people are seeing the calculations we made for them and the specific buildup with the racking and everything, the whole solution we showed them. And they're like, oh yeah, this is different compared to what I'm getting from all of these other companies. And then the question goes to the client, are you willing to pay for the solutions we provide so that that buildup of this specific solution and is that something worth you, or are you still more encased to have that cheaper solution that might not be the 100% fit? So that's exactly the question. Are you want to go for the tailor-made suit that fits on 100%, or do you think, well, I'm really close to a generic confection made suit and I'll go with that?
Hmm. So it's a case by case scenario at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, because sometimes our solution lies so close to what's being pitched. As soon as we're both pitching AutoStore, for instance, it doesn't matter that much. And then
Have
it's
you,
the
have you
question.
ever advised a merchant to go for the e-fulfillment
Yeah,
solution?
yeah. As soon as the numbers are so low, and it depends on which country we're providing, because solutions design, sort of creating this warehouse in a warehouse, it generates a lot of cost, and it depends on which country is calculating it. We're running under a different WMS, which can do almost everything, so it's really complete, but it also generates cost because of that completeness. And sometimes I'm telling a customer, I said, my implementation costs would be way higher on this specific country than maybe this solution of an e-fulfillment company, because e-fulfillment companies hardly have any cost because that operation is already running and they know we're expanding X% on a yearly base. So we're going to expand our operation in Q3 and then next year and then the year after. So it's just slowly expanding, and that's calculated.
Hmm. Have you have any case in which, because I know the auto store is kind of a popular thing, everybody kind of likes that. We can see the appeal; it makes sense. But have you have any case in which the auto store might have not been the best solution for that particular merchant?
Yeah, we've seen that. What happens is, if you have a SKU that's in heavy demand, for instance, that's the point. Because if I'm ordering, if I'm having like 250 orders per hour that need to be done, that means I can't do it out of one AutoStore gate, one workstation. So that means bins might flow from one work location to the different work location. And if that same one product, if you're an influencer and you have a deodorant or a perfume, perfume is LQ, so it's a little bit harder, but one heavy needed SKU, and it's flowing from one location to a different location, yeah, then that employee is waiting until that bin goes towards them. So you could say, okay, we're placing that product behind the employee, but that means that it's already a set workstation for that specific problem for that client. And if I have 20 or 30 workstations, then only that client can be serviced out of that workstation where the product is behind. So it creates complexity. And then the question is that AutoStore solution still the best solution?
And it is not in that case.
No, well, it adds complexity to a generic solution where the e-fulfillment company doesn't want to be that rigid and say, okay, we're just working out of one station. But the same goes for specific packaging that's
And in
branded
that
for a
in that
customer.
particular case, I guess you design a different approach. Out of curiosity, which one was that? I mean, how do you manage to do that? Because everybody will think like the auto store solution should be the most automatic, out efficient solution. So, what kind of solution did you create that was more efficient?
So in that case, it all has to do because it's not one size fits all because it's a specific solution for a specific problem. And as soon as you have still not a crazy amount of SKU depth, you could do multi-order picking with a
Okay.
trolley, and
Which is
then
more technically speaking is simpler, no?
it's simpler, exactly. And that's
That's the magic of
extracting
it. That's the beauty of it.
extracting the complexity. I said, as you asked before, contract logistics isn't necessarily more complex, but
Now
it's
I see why you stood silent for a moment, like not. Yeah, but the people that know, the wise guy that knows his stuff, it's always capable of foreseeing things that we from the outside we don't know because we haven't delved in depth with the thing. Now you are absolutely right. I mean, the deal is actually taking the complexity out of the equation. So, in a sense, contract logistics is less complex.
well, in this specific case, yes, but I can show you other examples where the complexity goes through the roof. I mean, for instance, if you look, and this is just a quick sidestep, if you look at fulfillment or even contract logistics we do for healthcare, we got some vials that go down to minus 70
Oof,
in freezers, and getting them out is a hassle because you
oof.
don't want to have a temperature drop in such a freezer. So then the complexity goes up to the roof because you can be in that freezer a limited amount of time without even the freezer temperature dropping. So their complexity goes through the roof. But
And that's done by
a different,
humans, isn't it? The no robots can actually do that yet.
no,
Get inside the freezer and stuff.
no. So that's being done, but it's in and out. And
Wow.
but as soon as you open the freezer up, a lot of cold air
Yeah.
goes out, and then it needs to be closed down and be closed for a few hours so the temperature can back down. So the exposure to the temperature is as minimum as possible. So even that picking process has a complexity on its own.
Wow. Yeah, no, I mean it's a world in itself, and then but back to our case, which ones do you think were like the main operational advantages of a tailor setup compared to an automated approach? I mean, which ones would you say are like the main operational advantages of a uh, contract logistics? We have already talked about that for the last 30 minutes, but let's try to narrow it down to
Yeah.
maybe 4 or 5 things.
So it's all in creating that specific solution and getting that efficiency.
Okay.
So contract logistics is creating efficiency with the most specific solution for your products, while on the other hand, e-fulfillment is the generic solution and saves you a lot of cost because you go into the generic flow. So as
Hmm.
soon as you want to have an optimized scenario specifically for your company, then contract logistics is the way to go.
And in the future, do you think that people will move more from fulfillment solutions to contract logistics solutions, or not?
As long as we have startups, we have new companies arising, and not everything is being swallowed by the Amazons and the Zalandos and these
Yes, of course.
companies, then still they both have their place within the ecosystem.
For DSV, which ones is the most interesting or the one that you prefer? I'm putting you in a pickle here. Huh? You have to choose.
Uh, well, I mean, they both have their different ways of working because if
There
you
are
look at
advantages.
contract logistics is also a lot of pallet in pallet out for whole b2b scenarios. We do on the tech part we do a lot of um, contract logistics, and where the e-fulfillment part or the e-commerce logistics is such a different animal because it's a lot of piece picking. So that means that you could generate a lot of revenue out of a small footprint. So I mean, I'm always a big fan of creating as much revenue on a small footprint and being as effective as possible. So that's why I'm in ecom. But if I see customers that do a lot of pallet in, pallet out, and their account managers, they're like, yeah, that's easy business, and we're creating a lot of whole and are being efficient in that part. So still, efficiency is key, and you can apply efficiency on both scenarios within B2B and B2C in the contract logistics environment.
Now, Frank, finally, for a company that is thinking about e-fulfillment versus contract logistics, which one should I use? If they have to do one single question, which one would that be? Which one will be the question that you will advise them to ask themselves so they can actually make a wise decision here?
Where will I be in 5 to 10 years? That's the biggest question, because a contract logistics solution that build up to get everything right might seem expensive at first, or a little bit more expensive to create the solution. But as soon as it starts to be more efficient and earns back the efficiency, then yeah, that's the question. And the question is, do you have that money in pocket to create and buy that future efficiency, or do you need the liquidity to go into product and everything around it? So it's like that tailor-made suit versus that off-the-shelf suit. Do you need to have that suit for the job interview tomorrow, or do you need that suit for your business life to fit you for the coming few years?